Tá tú géisteach le Midwest Radio, ach réile ar 96.1 FM.
Ja, maar hier is foto verstaken die flag en die Ceol Agus Ealaíon, Joe Byrne here again until 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 hours. The Ceol Spree Cant Shimsa Shalachas Agus Sploder Agus Bugani Shafford thrown in, maybe small bits here and there, but always wonderful music and song and history and poetry and lore and news of the arts. Where else would you find it? No wonder that Clúas Ella is the password on the programme. Agus Hassamad Jimare Jans with Digamall. They are really blochen sin. Agus begin Marty Fahey, that wonderful Mayo Chicago box player. Music at the House, Volume 2, and a lovely selection of reels there. First one, a composition of his own, indeed. And really blocha cholamajwaya. And this time, a lovely selection of jigs. The first fla, the Byrne Swallows, and the Berries. And tonight, we have a very special tribute to the late, great John Twin McNamara, one of the great stalwarts of the music, of the culture, of community, of Irish language, and of course of the glorious Scoil Acla down in Acla, who sadly passed away and was laid to rest during the week. We've a preview and news of the Piper's Day celebrations that's going on in Castlebar on the coming Piper's Day, which is Saturday, November the 1st. And that's taking place in the Bridge, the famous Bridge pub there upstairs in Castlebar itself. And we've a lovely sharp piece of Gaeilge from Pádraig Monaco, and a song about the tragedy of the drownings that occurred in Uisce Hui and Uisce Hass off the coast of those islands. 10 fine able-bodied fishermen losing their lives, and that occurred just around the time we're talking about now, between 10 and 11 and 12 o'clock on this particular day in October in 1927, 98 years ago. All that lahachtar a glor, but here's Marty Fahey and those lovely jigs wire. Beautiful music there, Joe. Listener says, loved the music from the house. Their new CD, loved the music in the last one as well. Well, they're led, of course, there by Marty Fahey, a great Mayo Chicago box player. And lovely music from them there. Kathleen Gavin, of course, with the Ballina connections as well. Bolo and piano and shin. And Music at the House, Volume 2 is the title of that. The Boyne Mist is the CD from John and Jacinta McAvoy. Lovely music, fiddle and concertina and shawuffo. And very interesting tunes coming up here, two compositions. The Cave of the Cats is the first one. Rathcrohan in County Roscommon, the Tower of the West, hosts Aun Ina Goth. And Awi Ina Goth is the entrance to the Celtic other world of the gates of hell. And the legend has it that Cuchulainn was the only Ulster warrior to defeat magical wildcats that emerged from that Awi or cave. And The Road to Mona Lee is a composition of the great shepherd and flute player and singer Colm O'Donnell from down in Sligo. Shoganish, isn't this beautiful? John and Jacinta McAvoy from their lovely new CD, The Boyne Mist. Now what you go hauling? Beautiful concertina and fiddle music there from John and Jacinta McAvoy, and that very specially for you, Anthony Jordan down there in Tully. A great fan, Anthony, of the concertina, of the fiddle, and thank you so much for your message there, Anthony. And a big hello to Mary Conlon Kelleher over in Mrs. Sago in Far Off Canada. Mary, thank you so much for your lovely updates and lovely email. Honey, can you agus Sulam sa gwilsif go bra agus go mwachin sin Hall Trasna on Agoin. Lovely stuff. Joe, play another tune from Catherine McAvoy. Love that new CD of hers. Well, it's entitled Listener Down the Crushing Road. And here she is with the two gorgeous hornpipes, Peter Wipers and Grace's hornpipe. And then we thought it on Berisha. Catherine McAvoy and sin an Vedogwar agus tagan sin ó druchin in bra oor nooit on moike down the Crushing Road and tanama to agus Holland sin le Perry Corn Fipi, Peter Wipers and Grace's hornpipe at tanama to Eddie Berishin. Joe, you played some lovely unusual songs from the great Delia Murphy, the great Mayo, South Mayo singer in the past while. As most of them I'd never heard of before. Familiar with the Blackbird and those ones, but I loved her version there of Reynard the Fox. And you might play another strange one from her. Well, here's a nice one, an interesting one. Thank you, ma'am, says Dan. And she has a lovely arrangement for this. And of course, Nora, or of course, Delia Murphy. This particular CD I'm using, this was 26 tracks in it. Many of the songs, indeed, we haven't heard before. They're not that popular as some others. 26 classic tracks. It says the legendary singer Delia Murphy, the definitive collection. Well, need a Samson for definitive.
Brought you into my room, to my room, to my room? What brought you into my room? Says the mistress unto Dan.
I came here to court your daughter, ma'am. I thought it no great harm, ma'am.
Oh, Dan, me dear, you're welcome here.
Oh, thank you, ma'am, says Dan.
How came you to know me daughter, me daughter, me daughter? How came you to know me daughter? 'Tis the mistress unto Dan.
Go into the well for water, ma'am. To raise the can I taught her, ma'am.
Oh, Dan, me dear, you're welcome here.
Oh, thank you, ma'am, says Dan. She's a bonny girl, your daughter, your daughter, your daughter. She's a bonny girl, your daughter, and I like her well, says Dan.
She's a girl that's fit for any man and has a grow for you, dear Dan. Oh, Dan, me dear, you're welcome here.
Thank you, ma'am, says Dan.
You can have me daughter, me daughter, me daughter. You can have me daughter, 'tis the mistress unto Dan. But if you take me daughter, Dan, of course you take me also, Dan. Oh, Dan, me dear, you're welcome here.
Begab. Thank you, ma'am, says Dan. This couple they got married, got married, got married. This couple they got married, Miss Elizabeth and Dan.
And now he keeps her mother and her father and her brother and ah, Dan, till you're the lucky man.
Oh, Lord.
Thank you, ma'am, says Dan.
Oh, go home and Father Dean Murphy there with one of the amusing, light-hearted songs from this lovely collection. And I'll do another song or two from that in the coming weeks, listener. Go to Mila Mai go to Shin.
An stáisiún is fearr sa bhean Midwest Radio.
Agus Rashidis, this time, sadly, during the week, one of the great warriors, Leach I Mask na Leachra Mora, of the world, warrior amongst all the great warriors, and the great Mayo man John Twin McNamara from Acla, passed away. Legend in his own lifetime, and it's a phrase that's hackneyed a lot, but it certainly is applicable in the case of John Twin McNamara. Good luck to you for the high show. Great Scoil, marvellous community person down in Acla, founder of the revived version in 1985, 40 years ago, of Scoil Acla. And a great Scoil, great wonderful singer and songwriter and musician as well. Member, of course, of the various marching bands down there and keeping that tradition flying. And, of course, a great folklorist and historian. Tonight, I'll be playing some segments from a day I spent. Most of the stuff will be from one morning or afternoon I spent, and part of an afternoon with John Twin back in 2004 in his own house in the Waha, and most of which hasn't been broadcast before. So go do Gina Flash the John agus Kudamuja Govronguji Mary agus Owen agus and Clongaladin Shin agus go do Gina Flash. But we'll start off with one of John Twin's own songs that he put together, Ealaíon Hayden, and he's praising all the islands of Ireland off the coast, of course, and there are so many beautiful ones, but of course he reserves special praise for Ealaíon Acla. And listener said, Joe, I loved your short segment of a tribute to John Twin on the Sunday night programme Ceol, and I loved that song Ealaíon Hayden that you played. What a beautiful air and lovely words to it. Great sense of pride, of place and of language from John Twin. God rest him. Thank you very much, listener. Shochanish an Toran.
Sho the lufwere na tira, Ceol sonna shimply le brie. Gus a mask na Ealaíon Ealaíon, she on perla fi rim, Achill Ealaíon Acla Grámach riú féin Aníos fríd na cianta Fuil Jesú na don O agin Iain an Atlanti Siad de chrofi gach rin Siad de wún le gach ó hín Gach trá agus cún gunne styrme agus gola Has tú riú go bún An áit na rugú mise Blinti wad ó hin Sola rúg an chimmer gefradach Agus ísta I wad a dhéin Go síri ag trús ag paidir órat Go bhilhing a ríist mullin An Ealaíon Acla Grámach riú féin
Sean McNamara sin go dúgadína flaiscó sig rá árán a chum sé héin árán fír álinn fad. Well, this is a particular day that back on the 10th of August 2004 I was on a walking tour around parts of Mayo and Sligo and Leitrim, following the footsteps of Lynch, the great collector, who had been collecting for the great bunting in the early 1800s. And he had visited Acla, of course, and so many other places right across Mayo and parts of Sligo as well, and Leitrim. And my footsteps took me to Acla. One of the houses that I stayed in was the house of John Twin and his good wife Mary. John Twin, I know here, one of the great characters from Acla. And we were sitting there in the morning and Mary made a big breakfast, and at times you'll hear the kettle singing and you'll hear the sound of a fry, and then a big shower came on, an August shower when wind blew up suddenly. In and out you'll hear that. But John began by talking about the salmon fishing and the draft netting of Kim Bay, or Keem Bay as we all call it. One of his favourite places close to Duacha where he lived indeed. And a very stunning and beautiful bay, listed as one of the most beautiful harbours in all of the world, not alone in Ireland. Seo mar a leabhar sé an maidin all in sin, agus muid ag sí ag an mórt, ag fechant amach an warige.
Well, as I was telling you there, Joe, that Kim Bay, it was a magic place for us and for everybody in this, particularly the Duacha area. And it was the place where the people herded the cattle, particularly in the summer months, and there was a Bowley village out there at the back of it, and it was a wonderful valley. And then you had the bay coming in there and that beautiful strand. It's famous all over the world. Everybody who comes to Achill has to go to Kim or Cún Cúm. The word comes from the idea that it's a valley, Cum, C-U-M, no, C-O-M. Agus an sin Cún Cúm Glan Cúm. So this place was always magic to us, and when we were very little boys, we would be going back there in the evenings after school, milking the cows with a can, you see. So the great attraction for us was the salmon fishing. There was a salmon fishery there, and from once we came to the top of the hill, it was another mile or more from there to where the strand was, and we would see the situation from there, and even though we had another mile or so to go, we'd be watching the situation with the salmon fishermen. And if the net was paid out in a sort of a half circle, you know, and we knew that things were all right. But then if they began to move and close the circle, then that meant that there were salmon in the net, and that they would be pulling it in onto the strand. That was the system, draft net fishing it was. And we would set off always in our feet at that time when we were young. And there was a little ditch along the side of the old track, and it was grassy, and we could go like wild goats. And our main aim was to get to the strand before the net was pulled in, so that we'd see the event of the salmon being landed on the strand. So after, we were doing that for ages, and we'd maybe wait around there and hear them hauling. They used to call it hauling salmon. And there was a man up on the side of the cliff. He was keeping watch. And when he saw salmon coming, the water is so crystal clear there, that you could see a salmon. But not everybody would be able to distinguish between a salmon and maybe a mullet or a trout. But these boys could; they were experts at it. So he'd give the signal then, and he used to shout, "Haul!" Or another expression, when the salmon were in that semicircle, he'd say, "Haul away!" And then all the excitement would start, and man in the stern of the curragh would pay out the remainder of the net to complete the circle, and then it was hauled onto the strand. So we'd be helping them then, and when the salmon came in, they'd have to kill them. And they had what was called the soggarth to kill the salmon. Now the soggarth was a piece of a stick a little bit longer than the thole pin which they used for in the rowlock, and it was a little bit heavier. So when it came to the time that you were given the order, get the soggarth, then you became a man, that you were being trusted with the job of hitting the salmon on the head with the soggarth, and that you couldn't hit the salmon too hard or break the skin or anything like that. It had to be just a couple of hits in the right place on the head of the salmon. And it was called the soggarth, of course, because in doing this activity you were administering the last rites to the salmon, just like the soggarth to the person before he dies. And that's the story of the soggarth, on soggarth.
Where the song of the lark is heard as clear as the water, there lies the beginning of something, the source, the beginning of a journey, a life, a path, the beginning of a river. Tuchtar Polgorum an Owen Shaw, an áise deisiún sé, agus a richen sé isteach in Awa Chanley, agus she's tríd an drehead, agus amach san agin Atlantic. It's just an orgy extranjeri. It's a lovely place for strangers.
Well, Joseph, mar is oldich tá an simagam sa Gaelic, agus dulchan cin na Gaeilge, agus is Scoil Acla le blinti fada ó níideogat ó chuig bhí muid ag John O'Sorireacht an Gaelic agus an cultúrachar an cin. Agus tháinig mé ar an don seo scríb feardar a bhenim sémas ó muolia an don. Agus seo í teanga bhín ár máthara is anam don don. Agus sé mar seo. Éist Clinimin scach cearda, fuim wog jas even alling, mar cheolta bin na gláiseach, nó crónán ceolta sí. Éist, tá sí a géirí an áirde, ag ngartú is ag ardú. Tá nuim a géirí láidir teacht thugann ar an nglaí. Fan, Ceir de seo an ar dimpel le ceoltóireacht is ag sioscú. An bhfuil marúil teacht an minsin. nó an aislinn í an glór. Ó ní ha a cháirde, tá an gof seo an scach cearda. Tá teanga bhín ár máthar ag múscailte muo. Tá teanga bhín na Gaeilge ag dúiseacht ó na sléifte. Tá lú ag teachta na géag agus éirim na crí. Tá scapú ar na ngéalta. Tá an brón bhí ar hí a géalú. Is solas geall na gréin ag tanú ar hí a ríist. Tá glór even úsol ag crónán in ár glúsaí. Nís binan an a cócha nó cealúr cuin na smól. Tá teanga bhín níomh páric le cleisteáil ar na bonta, in lean agus ar ardán, ó chean go ceanmhaío. Éist, clunam glór ar máthar, go geanúlas go gráhar, ag láhairt go múnte mánda. Is fífríonn siad á clyn, an glinseamh mé a fáistí, an bhfuil trúide agah dúr máthar, atá go bútha crátí gan measar hí na sim. An licí sibh dom éigú ar hallú glas na héireann, nó an neannaí sibh mé héanú os chuine an tíl mhór. Tá an freagra teacht go láidir, ní buil de tríthe bháthir, as béitú fós go blachar, is faoi réim a muo. Tá an tóg agus an críne ag múscailt sús go críúil. Tá jeirú leis an ihe go scapú ar an geo. Tá mothú teast na daoine go spiridir na gríthe. Is ní bhéh siad fasta clítí faoi Londú agus faoi bhrón. Tá an seanúr, crappa, clíte, go maireachas go síimsúil. Tá lúchar in a chríostaich, is tá sé géirí óg. Tá fear ban is páiste, faoi riméid is faoi áthas. Is tá teanga bhín ár máthar ag múscailte muo. Tá muo ina dúiseacht le dóchas is le dúracht, I bhír heiseacht na cúise, lean ár deangaí chur ar fáil. Tá solas geall na Gaeilge ag bracú ar na spéithe, is bin ag ceol na nénlaí, ag fógar stúin an lá. Tá críomh an ahar ó grána, hála méle á haunis, go críúlas go meolach, ag crothú a chud seol. Tá an chríomh seo ina réaltólas, dar stúrú is dar drórú, is crimid blána hóide ar an Gaelic a muo.
mánskach cearnaí, fuam bhoca íbing áling, mar chealcha bing dí clársach, neo cronin ceanna sí. Ha ishe gédi arche, le nersto suas gan arste, ha fuama gédi lájad, se nuking éide gui. Kitte seo marche Michael, e cealtarach sa bdídal, vel mi arvoching ed minching jo, ne ashle casa glor. Chanie a charjan, ha gusha aanskach cearnaí, le chenka bing mahad, a chum darit a bell. Ha fuam vog ving na galig, a dúscach feig na sléitjen, ha lús tra na gégan, a gédi na ar crí. Ha scapa géad na njawe, ha brana lípa njanlai, sjau solas gall na gréine, go tach na chúra díos. Ha glód aiving osam, ai crana njo ar closan, nas pinyan njo na cuachan njo na killar bing gan sma. Ha chenka bing of Patrick, ga chlinching feig na payan, fe glantan agus arstan, a kuma dochas bell. Gúdir maithid a haga bóda cráide gan mesvín na suim. A lig sibh agal ag mí is talú glas na gael, neo tían sibh tog a lás dar a mas ciúna dú ó bhór. Ha flicker tín go láidir, cha niegal a gaibh báthid, le chenka bing na galig, vi bít a riad a bell. Sin a dúsca sa úrachag na sceoil, tá déadach éad an líche sa scapa géad a cheol. Sa móchal ha dúine le spiritúr nar clia, ha bhí iad úla claite fondúach neor fóbhrán. Ha géal nisteach dúsca le dochas is le dúra, sé fiaróiseach na cúise sin ar tsinca chúd an géal. Solas gal na galig, a bailske tron na spéidir, ha bing de ceol na níanai, a fosclaín go lá.
agus árán na bdáir nuiche agus chasaigh Cathy McGuinness as Alban agus í canú sa ghealacin sin cilibhríide an tanmhtá a trúchan ín jazz sin agus Changa Bean or Mawahid. And Changa Bean Mawahid was a song newly composed to promote the revival of the Irish language. And was performed by Sean O'Malley, a poet and singer and writer from Waterford, at the Ballyhaunis Feis in the early 1900s, and he took first prize. And John Twin McNamara put music to that wonderful, noble music to it, and gave it, of course, to all his protégés and friends and students from Acla. And Alicia Kelly, the great harper from Westport who lives in Acla, picked it up and recorded that with Cathy McGuinness and Shin, the great Scots Gaelic singer. Go hall in the father and Shin, and where the tribute to John Twin McNamara continues, and all this was recorded on the 10th of August in 2004, all the conversation and so on. And present that day as well was a man who came in to visit in the morning while John's wife Mary was preparing the breakfast for us, and you can hear the fry, as I said, and the kettle going in a storm. A showery storm of rain came on the window as well, but Des and John were talking about tunes and so on, and they mentioned O'Carolan, because I was on my walk around Mayo and Sligo and Leitrim, following the footsteps of O'Lynchy, the great collector who was the big helper of O'Carolan, and they mentioned some beautiful tunes that he had picked up in Acla. Of course, Acla was one of them. But John Twin asked Des Cafferkey to play another tune from O'Carolan, and this is the lovely one that he played first, Madam Maxwell and Thanabatoid.
An stáisiún is fearr sa bheaníothar, Midwest Radio.
The time is 11 o'clock.
Midwest Radio's top of the hour with Faddens for Men, Brafey Road, Castle Bar, where fashion never sleeps. Stockist of Sixth Sense, Columbia, Farah, Superdry and Rivet and Denim. Faddens.ie.
Midwest Radio weather, thanks to Grant. Get ahead with Grant's most innovative heat pump, the Arona R290. Exceptional performance with quiet operation. Visit grant.ie.
Agus níis an sidige Ceol Nómataí a gá nómataí go muisce agus fiche hog second in níis a híine agus chlag san luiche. Tonight, clear spells and scattered showers, heavy with a chance of hail at times, a breezy night with moderate to fresh, gusty winds, west to southwest. Increasing strong near gale force in coastal areas, lowest temperatures of 5 to 8 degrees. Agus a moidach, de céadín an fiche neo lá, de bhí yerufóid. Tomorrow, another breezy day with sunny spells and scattered showers. Westerly winds will become moderate to fresh and gusty for much of the day, and will ease in the evening with showers becoming increasingly isolated. Highest temperatures in Moidach 10 to 12 degrees agus sin on Emshid Igabuiche show.
Midwest Radio weather, thanks to Grant. For reliable, efficient and affordable home heating solutions, trust Grant to heat your home. Think heating, think Grant. Visit grant.ie.
Tá tú géisteach le Midwest Radio, ach réile 96.1 FM.
Agus fáilte bheith eistís go dtí Ceol Agus Ealaíon ag éisteachtain sin le Des Cafarcaí a bheith Stein, and Des and John Twin were sitting there by the table, and we were enjoying ourselves about to sit into a big breakfast on the 10th of June 2004, and the conversation had spun around to the arrival of the war pipes instead of the fife and drum, replacing the fife and drum bands in Acla, and the connection with Scotland and the Tatey Hoking and all that. And Des played a number of tunes connected with Donegal and Scotland, and there was mention of the Cameronian reel and all that kind of stuff in and out, and John Twin was warming up his own concert flute, and that was the way the morning went, go haul in her fad. But what's interesting about this is that John Twin McNamara, of course, was a man who loved wordplay and had lots of stuff to do in relation to writing, and he wrote that first beautiful song that we heard there, Ealaíon the Hayden, praising Acla amongst all the islands of Ireland, which we heard at the top of the programme. And of course he put the music to that beautiful song there, Chonga Bean Mawahid. But here's an amusing song that he wrote about a very interesting episode that occurred after a big storm in Acla. And there was what John Twin described as a gold rush. Sure, Marachos Eshias on Scoil. It's a very long story, but we'll hear most of it.
True story, no? In 1992, I was at the Flagshole in Nahearn in Clonmel. I'm walking down the street in the morning. I think it was a Friday morning, and I met Joseph McGunn from Kilmovee. So Joseph said to me, he said, there was awful flooding in Acla this night. It's terrible, he said, a disaster. And I said, well, that wouldn't affect us where I come from anyway. He said, what village are you from? I'm from Duach. That's the place, he said. So I just took it with a pinch of salt, because you see, when we were growing up at home, and we'd be watching the thing on the telly and all that, and hearing the reports of the flooding in Shannon, my mother used to always say, well, thanks be to God, that's one thing that doesn't affect us. We have good rivers to take all the water into the sea. So anyway, we came home from Clonmel on a Monday night, and the news had broken about it was on a Sunday night actually, and the news had broken about this flooding. So we went to school on the Monday, and I could see that all the mountainside was ripped away by the floods, and we heard the different reports. So after school I went for a walk up by this particular area, and I was shocked by what I saw. The roads had been washed away, bridges, whole areas of the river, the bed of the river was all washed down into the sea. And I went away up, kept going away up the mountain, and I was looking as I went along, and I came to a place up there called Town of War. There was an old village up there, one of the oldest villages in Acla. And in the river there, the river bed was washed clean away, all the loose stones, and it was just a big flagstone. And then I picked up this little stone, and I knew as soon as I picked it into my hand, because of the weight, that it was something different. So I kept looking around, and on my way down I said, well, isn't this a disaster? If this had happened up at the Dodder in Dublin or at any other place, it'd be news headlines, and there wasn't a thing about it. So when I came down home, this Tom Cafferty, he was involved with me in Scoil Acla at the time, and we used to get Jim Fahey down for a couple of events, anything in Acla, you see. So I took up the phone, and I had this in my hand, and I gave 2 taps to the phone, and he said, what's that? I said, that's gold. You're joking, he said. I'm serious. I said, I have just been up the mountain where the flooding was, and I have found it. Now, I said, what I want to talk to you about is the way that we are being treated, and the flooding that has taken place, and there's nothing being done about it. I said, get on to Jim Fahey and get him down here, and this is national news at least. So left it at that, and the next day was Tuesday evening, and I wasn't in the door from school when there was a call from Town Catholic to say Jim Fahey will be in this particular point in half an hour. So I went to meet him and talk about, wanted to talk about the flooding and what had taken place, and that something might be done about it and it might be highlighted. So the flooding was so bad that all the riverbed was washed away, and I wasn't here, but I heard the people told me that it was like thunder. All the rocks were being tumbled, huge rocks being tumbled by the force of the water down through the river down to the shore, and even the ducks were washed away in a certain place over at another little river. So anyway, I'm up in the river, and I was explaining about this stone I found, and I didn't know what it was. So with that, this lady came up, and she had this, and she said, gold, and passed it into where I was being interviewed in the riverbed, and here it was, a little bit of gold. So the interview stopped pretty fast at that stage, and Jim Fahey had what he wanted. So himself and the photographer, and they put this little bit of gold onto a bit of glass, and they magnified it, and of course the story went from being a flood to being a gold rush, that the gold had been found, you see. So it went into the news, and I remember it must have been about Thursday when it hit RTE in the news, and after the news, the newsreader said, and now we go over for news of different gold, because I know that Kilkenny and whoever else were playing in the hurling final the following Sunday, which was the first Sunday in September, right after the Flackyol, and so the thing went all over the place. Now we didn't really want any publicity, you know what I mean, Maria, but it was happening in spite of us, you see. So it just goes to show that you can have the greatest story and you cannot make news of it, but something like this can make headlines.
John Twin McNamara, they are describing the terrible flood that occurred when he was away at the Ceol in Clonmel, and of course, instead of giving attention to all the damage that was done to the roadways and all that kind of stuff and the bridges down in Acla, the attention was turned to two pieces of gold that had been discovered in a gold rush, and John Twin put these wonderful verses together about that.
Oh, come all ye here, just lend an ear, and to you I will unfold the mystery of the terrible flood that unearthed our island gold. The potato diggers of Achill and of National Gallery fame put a hole in Paul Henry's cumulus cloud, and it then began to rain. Soon the deluge filled each mountain stream from the Croghan mountain top, and all along their wandering banks sure a tumble stone and rock. Our residents, both young and old, were frightened by the sound, but we soon forgot our troubles when gold nuggets they were found. Now we put our heads together and we try to keep it hush, to preserve our lovely island from a Yukon-type gold rush. But soon the news flashed round the world by a satellite in the sky, and we feared that foreigners soon would have their finger in the pie. Now the old Drummermore, just as of yore we used to do the trick, to summon all the neighbours with their shovels, spade and pick. Very soon we were assembled, every woman, child and man, but we sadly were confronted by the Mayo mining ban. Now Jack the Flying Scotsman felt that he had just the plan, So he headed for Achill Island with his spur on, kilt and pan. There were thousands there to greet him from the Yukon to Bangkok. And to his great amazement, sure they each possessed a walk. Bright and early the next morning, we all headed up the stream, where we met a bunch of leprechauns, and their colours red and green. The news that they did whisper was the answer to our dream. Our crocks full to the top since we started to walk in this Achill Island scene. And the Yukon is now the walk on. Our crocks full to the top since we started to walk in this Achill Island scene. For the walks, for the instead of a plan. You see, mother.
Ceol Fear Veen all an inch in her fad, though Ceol Agus Ealaíon, past pupil of John Twin McNamara's stunning piping there, the wandering minstrel selection. Shawnee and Shannon. Earlier we heard Ceol Agus playing a composition of his own, the Chongi Road there, and some lines stitched in Irish and English by John Twin McNamara. Beautiful, beautiful. Eir Homailshin. And if you wish to contact us, by the way, the number is 087 900 4141. That's 087 900 4141 by WhatsApp or by text. And that's in association with Megan's Bar and Kitchen, nestled in the heart of Manhattan. Food and crack, 7 days a week in New York City, Durnshire. Agus Sinead Scoil, well, Des Cafferty was there, of course, that morning, and Des was swapping stories and playing tunes in and out as the conversation drifted around, and Mary, John's wife, was throwing in and on very, very witty line, Homanishin. But John gave me some lovely snippets and was explaining to Des Cafferty as well about the beginnings of the revival of Scoil Acla and how it had been on their mind for some time, and back it finally started up in the autumn of 1985. That's exactly 40 years ago. But before that, he went on to explain that he in fact had got some... John Twin himself went on to explain that he had got an idea before that, and he had gone over to the county Roscommon, and he had gone over to get concert flutes to bring over to the school in the Wacha.
In 1985, that Tommy Ganley, you know him, from what do you call? He's from near Loughlin, yeah. He was making flutes. So this was about February, and we had a little fun in the school band, and then they buy 5 or 6 of these concert flutes, and didn't have a clue. It had been the first concert flute that I could really, you know. And I learned how to blow them, and I showed the fellas how to just blow into them, you know, to get the sound. And then they had the bit on the tin whistle, and sure they started building from there, you know. I was now before Ceol Agus didn't start till that August, but we were moving at that time on the flutes and the tin whistles. So that's the flute.
You're thinking of a tune, Twin McNamara?
I am. I'm trying to. No, I'm thinking of a tune, and I want to see if I can get it. Right.
And John Twin went on to tell me that he had put together a little bit of a tune which he used as a warmer-upper. And he was explaining to Des Cafferty how those flutes had come into the area, and John had been warming up this fadog himself that he had got from Tom Ganley way back in February of 1985 as a prelude, and indeed as a warmer-upper also, to Scoil Acla, which was revitalised and reincarnated. It had started, of course, in the early 1900s, the very first summer school or Scoil Sauri in Ireland, but it was resurrected in 1985, but this was the prelude to it. And John Twin went on to play for me the the warming up tune that he uses when he was trying to trying to get the music, the flute into tune.
Come on.
Fáil go bhicimiid, sílim sé ghfuil sé in cheartagin an boutische. Sílim sé gurb seach an tune a chas John Twin gum an lásin. This is a little warm-up, makey-uppy jig that he used to do his warm-up.
Make you up, Joe.
Oh, you made up to yourself?
I make you up because just to get my fingers going. I was at that for bloody doctor's years, you know.
That's your warmer-up or so? I warmer up. The McNamara band. No, not one bar show. Do you know it, Mary? You know?
And wonderful bit of fun and repartee there about the warming up tune that John Twin had put together to get the John Gandley flute that he had bought in 1985 in February. Bought 6 of them for the school band. And they had been working on the whistles already. But just that very morning that I happened to be there, Tommy the Bowley, a first cousin of John Twin McNamara, Tommy the Bowley McNamara of the famous Bowley restaurant, arrived, and he had this beautiful programme, a very, very fine programme from 1914, from the Scoil Acla programme of 1914. And it caused a great sense of discussion. And Tommy the Bowley had got this from a wonderful lady in Ballinrobe who had been working in Corrymore House in Achill. And Bridie Malloy was her name, and she had unearthed this programme, one of the very first programmes from the 1914 summer school or Scoil Sauri in Acla, as I mentioned earlier, the very first and premier earliest summer school in the whole of Ireland. And her husband, of course, Eddie Malloy, was from Achill Island as well, and a great historian, and did an awful lot of history work down in Ballinrobe where they went to live. And Bridie, in fact, wrote a beautiful book about that. But Tommy the Bowley had handed over this beautiful 1914 programme to John Twin, and John went in a little discussion about some of the earlier people involved in that programme and in the foundation of the very foundation of Scoil Acla way back at the beginning of the 1900s.
Well, this, as I said, it's a great thrill to get this little programme, the 1914 programme of Scoil Acla, and they were such a progressive group of people. And in fact, the photograph that's there of the founder members in 1913, they issued it as a Christmas card, and it is in the house. I have a copy of that in the house somewhere whenever I can come on it. And now, of course, one of the founders was Mrs. Weddall. And when we launched the thing, Tommy was chairman at that first year, and when we launched the thing, I was speaking on Sean O'Haley's programme, and she was called locally Mrs. Waddle, and in fact she was called Kylia Waddle. And when I was giving out the founder members,
she was the first penguin.
Yeah, well, that's because there is a name very similar to it called Waddell, but she was Weddall. Now, that's a very, very long story, this woman's origin, and she was one of the founder members. But I believe the idea was she gives the credit to Thomas O'Reilly, who was a teacher here in Acla, and he became Professor of Irish in University College, Galway, and he was a professor there up to the 50s, the 1950s. And anyway, Mrs. Weddall, when this lady who was living in Dublin, she's Ceol Agus Ealaíon, the daughter of a man who was Minister for Education, Tom Derrick, a Mayo man. And when she heard this Mrs. Waddle mentioned, she was quite upset because Mrs. Weddall always objected to that. She didn't want to be. She wanted to be called Mrs. Weddall. And my father, who was involved in Scoil Acla, he was the only man I heard calling her Mrs. Weddall, and he put the emphasis. And I thought because he had been in America that he was using a bit of an American accent. But anyway, she said, and she acknowledges this in the book, that when she heard it on radio in Gael, she said, Dúirt go an tanam asa richt ar fad. And in order to put things right, she decided to research the life of Mrs. Weddall. And this is the result. Emily M. Weddall, Bunny Horse Scoil Acla. And she gives the whole history of the movement and all the people that were involved in it, and it's a great history. That's Ceol Agus Ealaíon. She used to work in lives in Dublin, used to work in the the Institute Changoliachta in Dublin. And
did you say something, Tommy, about a connection there?
And John Twin McNamara there explaining about great Mayo Dublin woman Isog Nierig, who wrote a wonderful book about the early founders of Scoil Acla. She was the daughter of Tom Derrig, TD for Mayo, of course. And very, very interesting and very, very, very much involved politically. But John Twin wants to give credit in particular to some of the people involved in the early founding of the Scoil Acla, and he was discussing the 1914 programme that had been given to him by Tommy the Bowley, and that had come from Bridie Malloy, who had been working in Achill and had moved on to Ballinrobe, but sent it on to them. Well, the conversation went round then to the Poirach as well, who was this extraordinary individual who had been central as well to the promotion of the Gaeilge and the promotion of the music in Achill. And the Poirach also taught out in Achill Beag, the island of Achill Beag. And because of my rambles and travelling, John Twin was explaining to Des Caffican and myself that the Poirach's wife was actually from Ahamore. She was one of the Tigers from Carabon and Ahamore. And that the Poirach was the first to introduce the pipes on Uilleann Acla. They had, of course, a very, very significant amount of fife and drum bands before that, and melodeons and other instruments. But by an inch scale, and during the talk about Donegal and the Poirach and the mixture of Scottish and so on, Des Caffican thought of two lovely Byrne dances here from Con Cassidy's. Con Cassidy from Teelan, the great fiddle player from Donegal. And of course, these tunes associated with Scotland as well, and John Twin asked him to play them out. Shot Marachas Des on Majin All in Shin. Ceol Agus from the wonderful pipe band that was founded, in fact, by Des Cafferty, who was in the house that morning. Des was playing those lovely Byrne dances from Con Cassidy of Donegal and Teelan. And Des and John Twin went on to talk about the Waha pipe band and the other 4 pipe bands on the island as well. And they were chatting all around that, and John Twin, of course, himself had played in those bands. And Des, a member of them, later went on to found that Clúbe Cúnmó pipe band, and there's a tune that he had actually composed there himself. A very, very interesting one. Cathal Brua an Tanamatóid, in memory of one of the great heroes of 1916. Well, John Twin also talked about a number of poets that morning, a number of poets that, of course, were involved with the movement down in Acla, and Percy French and a whole lot of others who were involved in that particular movement. And he was, of course, delighted that Des Cafferty was present, and he was also talking about the importance of the English language as well, and of the poets and writers, and how there was a dimension all the time in the Scoil Acla from the very, very beginning. There was a dimension that was very much involved in the literary end of things, and they were always trying to promote that. Ceol Agus Ealaíon. But if you wish to text us, by the way, the number is 087, or you can WhatsApp us, 087 900 4141. That's 087 900 4141. In partnership with the pub in New York City that boasts the best Irish atmosphere, the Perfect Pint Public House. And you can WhatsApp us or text us 087 900 4141. Some lovely messages in. Agus Ishmid le Quizzico Ballin Belk.
Miss his heavy stick and stride in Wicklow. His story talking down Wine Tavern Street, where old men sitting in the wizen daylight have kept an edge upon his gentle wit, while women on the grassy streets of Galway, who hearken for his passing, but in vain, shall hardly tell his step as shadows vanish through archways of forgotten Spain. Ah, they'll say, Porrick's gone again exploring, and now down glens of brightness, oh, he'll find an alehouse overflowing with wise Gaelic, that's braced in vigour by the bardic mind, and there his thoughts shall find their own forefathers in minds to whom our heights of race belong, in crafty men who ribbed a ship or turned the secret joinery of song. Alas, death mars the parchment of his forehead, and yet for him I know the earth is mild. The windy fidgets of September grasses can never tense a mind that loved the wild. So drink his peace, this grey juice of the barley runs with a light that ever pleased his eye, while old flames nod and gossip on the hearthstone, and only the young wines cry.
John Twin McNamara there reciting a poem written by F.R. Higgins, who was from Foxford, of course, and the lament, it was a lament for Pádraig Ó Conradh, the great writer of songs and tunes, agus chuile hort mar sin. And they were talking about laments and all that kind of stuff, and Des Cafferty happened to draw down the idea that in his mind, that the Parting Glass was one of the lovely tunes that was so suitable to be sung when somebody had passed or somebody had emigrated and all that kind of stuff. And Dennis went on then to tell this little story how he had brought a nice interesting twist into the story of the parting glass and to the tune itself. And very appropriate that we play this tonight, I think, as well, in memory of John Twin McNamara, as we celebrate his wonderful legacy with this feature. Sure, mar laur des Catholici and law jazz sin mi lunas and Jehola civilian Ravilegs Kahar in the house of John and of Mary McNamara, that welcoming, wonderful house, as we were eating breakfast. Cush board I Nuacha.
Compositions, Joe, just for the record, it wouldn't be right to take full credit for all composed music. You'd have to be spiritual about it, I think, and give credit to, I don't know, wherever the music comes from. So I think it's hard to explain where it comes from. So, but this piece I'll play now, it's called The Parting Glass Jig. And I kind of took the melody from the start of the song, The Parting Glass, you know, for example, you know, and of all the money, the Parting Glass song. So into a jig form, then I put
Des Kafka earlier in the house of John Twin McNamara on that lovely August day in 2004, playing a jig version of The Parting Glass. What a beautifully appropriate, lively version of that sad and poignant tune in memory of John Twin McNamara after all his wonderful endeavours. Of course, Des, one of his pupils, just like Ceol Agus Ealaíon, whom we heard earlier. And then we heard that stunning piece of music Des composed called The Fresh Air. And of course, it was the same day that I recorded from Des, actually, the Cradling Arms of Cruachan that he had just composed. Beautiful waltz about the mountain of Cruachan. And he said it was like an armchair cradling the people in its arms down at the end of the village. Go Hall and her father, and John Twin McNamara, of course, a great man to sing a song and compose one. Here he is with one of the great songs, The Great O'Malley of Slievemore Hill.
Sure, if I were able in education to scribe your praises with my slender quill, how in former ages were known to Achill, the great O'Malley from Slievemore Hill. A seabird glancing, a salmon prancing, a swan advancing o'er the flowing rill, and the small birds singing their notes entwining, all harmonizing round Slievemore Hill. Assist me, genius, assist me, fair one, assist me, genius, while I expound my 1,000 praises of the many fair ones that lie to south of Slievemore Mount. Them all surrounding sweet Slievemore Mountain lies there surmounted with a vernal hue, and the singing fountains are there resounding, and megalithic tombs they are there to view. The golden eagle with its strident whistle from Ohinga the Niller go Cruachan Ord in a wilna haltra farge is irje son orib agus glan cuma go brodul fui. Sure, if I were able in education to scribe your praises with my slender quill, how in former ages were known to Acla a great O'Malley from Slievemore Hill.
John Twin McNamara there with that beautiful song there, this lovely song, The Great O'Malley of Slievemore Hill. Go hall in your fad the way, yeah. And some lovely messages in, and we'll try and get through as many of them as we can. Go here to fad dan Clara Lugajo, agus go lugad in a flash the John Twin McNamara. Joe, what's the name of the CD of Marty Fahey? It's absolutely class. It's simply called Music at the House Volume 2, and it's available. Music the House Volume 1 came out maybe 15 years ago, or a little bit more there. Another lovely one, Joe, wonderful listening to the voice of John McNamara and feeling a bit sad but also feeling proud. What a glorious tradition he helped to propagate and to nourish and continue here amongst us. And Ceol Agus, another lovely one here. Kathleen and Ball says, lovely tunes, Joe, and very, very interesting tribute to the late John Twin McNamara. Good night to all my friends. Good meal Maigat and Shin, and good night, Joe, listening here in Ballyhornis, the Roscommon Exile. And that's, of course, is Liam, our old friend, the Roscommon Exile. Liam, I hope you're enjoying the music. And Liam says, I'm really enjoying the different tunes, Joe. Shin go hall in our fad lister, go meal Maigat. Liam and Pierce O'Reilly, a lovely message from Pierce here. It says, Joe Hara Clár Iantach Mars Grach, Cribriste Gwil John Emihe Winnie, Cara Dielish, agus Fair Ildonach, a hog a heel, the Chur Hun Keen and Hioil, agus an Choltuid Huelach. Is omi Cora of Yagan, Lua Maidin agus Maul and Soniche. Covrón the Mary agus the Chlán Ilog, Pierce O'Guira, Pierce gur míle maigat, Pierce O'Reilly gur míle maigat the Shin Firish. Agus Ceol Agus, another lovely one here. It says, hello Joe. What a lovely tribute you're paying to John Twin McNamara, who we were privileged to have known. A dear neighbour and friend. He nurtured and encouraged us all with his positivity and was always generous in sharing his wealth of knowledge, particularly with regard to our family tree. John was instrumental in securing funding from the Mayo VEC in the late 1960s, enabling Dad, Mick Fadgen, to return from England and to teach music in Acla, something we will always be grateful for. We enjoyed many afternoons over the years when we will always be grateful to him for that. We enjoyed many afternoons when Mary and John himself would come for a visit and a sing-song might break out. Or John and Mum would have a little waltz around the room, and Auntie and John would reminisce about people from Duacha who had immigrated to America. Happy memories that we will treasure forever from the family of the late Mick and Ellen Fadgen of Duacha, Keel West in Duacha. And indeed we have a little treat for you as well in store in a few minutes. But just before that, we'll hear another little piece of the pipes from Shawnee O'Lynchy. And here he uses the drums, of course, are being used as well here from the War Pipe Band. A lovely, lovely combination.